It's probably 4 or 5 years back now. I was just having fun, doing Haugen Racing and going to school and doing a bunch of other stuff. And basically just building cars for the SEMA show and for fun. Started drifting, been doing it a little bit. I'd gotten hooked up with the guys at Liberty Walk and Rocket Bunny. So that's Wachuru Kato and Kei Mira, as well as Tosh and all their right-hand men and the whole team. They were like, hey, you need to come out to Tokyo Auto Salon. Eventually we want to bring the Lambo out there, but just come out there and check it out. And I was like, oh, that would be unreal. Like, I've never been to Japan. I love the Japanese culture and style and all that stuff, but I'd never been there, and I'd never been to Auto Salon, never been drifting there, and I was like, this could be crazy. They ended up getting me tickets for the Auto Salon, and I was like, I'm going out there, I'm going by myself. I'm just gonna make it a fun little adventure, go run around Tokyo, check it out, go to the Auto Salon, and then, you know what, while I'm there, I'm gonna drive up to Ebisu. It was Tokyo Auto Salon happens in the middle of January, and so for the most part, drifting doesn't really happen. A lot of the tracks have snow and ice on them, but I was like, you know what, it's worth a try and see if I can't make something happen. So I'd actually hooked up with Andrew at Power Vehicles. He runs all the, let's call it Western drifting at Ebisu Circuit, so for English-speaking people and people traveling in, he runs getting you cars and doing all stuff like that. And so I hit him up and was like, hey, I want to try to come out there, maybe check out some cars and potentially go drifting. So basically, trip starts out. I flew out there by myself, like I said, and I had like a day and a half to myself to just kind of hang out in Tokyo before Auto Salon started. And so it was the craziest thing. So I get there, it's like it's overnight, I guess. So you leave like at like 6 in the afternoon from LA, and then you get in there at like 10:30 at night the next day, essentially. I got in there and I was like, I just gotta go check some stuff out. So I just started rolling around Tokyo. I was just cruising around at night, checking out the sights and scenery, and then got some sleep. And the next day, I basically just got lost in Tokyo. I took the metro to one spot, turned off my GPS on my phone and Google Maps and all that, and just walked for literally like 8 hours. I just checked out, found like these crazy temples, found like the whole fish area and where all the fishing and importing and exporting seafood happens, and it was just the most wild day. That was my first experience in Japan. And from there, did the Tokyo Auto Salon thing, which was amazing. Got to hang out with the Liberty Walk guys and all the other brands that they kind of associate with. And so that was super rad. That was basically, I think it was 2.5 days essentially. I wasn't there for business or anything like that. This was before Haugen Racing was a business of any sort. So I was just there as a spectator, friends with Liberty Walk, just kind of enjoying it. So it was super cool. I got to see a bunch of the new body kits coming out, the new builds, meet a bunch of the Japanese brands and owners in person. I actually got like my first Vertex wheel from them themselves, from their booth, which was super cool. As well as 326 power. I got a set of lug nuts and a couple keychains. It was just super fun because they're selling all these products right there. You can touch them and see them and feel them, which is usually not possible with these cool Japanese products because you're ordering them online. So that was a pretty special experience. One of the other cool little things that happened was I got to eat lunch with Kei Mira. It was just me and him. He can barely speak English, and I can't speak Japanese, so it was something like, let's go eat. It was lunchtime. We went and got, I think it was just like beef and french fries or something, but that was super fun, just kind of hanging out with him, super casual. And then they actually had a D1 GP drift demo there, so a bunch of the guys were out drifting out in kind of the back area, and I got to see that. This was literally, went from like, I'd never seen any of this in person. I wasn't really someone who watched like the option videos and things like that. I'm someone who likes to see it in person myself, and I was blessed enough to be able to do that. So my first exposure to a lot of this culture was right at Auto Salon, just seeing it in person, which was too cool. So at this point, I had only been in Tokyo, so I didn't have a car or anything like that. Had taken the metro to get all around or walked. To get to Ebisu, you can drive all the way from Tokyo, but it's like a 4.5 hour drive. So, or you can take a train north about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way, and then rent a car and drive the rest of the way up. And so that's what I did. Andy from Power Vehicles was cool enough to kind of tell me how to do all this. Basically, just to set the tone, at this point, it's like 7 or 8 p.m., and I'm getting on this train, roll up into the middle of nowhere, well, felt like it to me. It's actually a fairly large town, but now I'm trying to find this rental car place, right? And I'm completely by myself. It's middle of the night. Just the craziest experience. I had no way to really contact my parents or my friends or anything like that, and so I was all out on my own. I ended up finding the rental car place. As you get further out, people speak less and less English. It gets incredibly hard to navigate, but it was an adventure. Like, it really was. I ended up getting the car and driving for like 45 minutes up north to Ebisu, or Nihamatsu rather, which is the town that Ebisu is right next to. Got my hotel and got some good sleep. Next day, it's Ebisu time. So rolled up to Ebisu. It's snowing, ice everywhere. It's like a 25-minute drive from the hotel, and I just feel like I'm honestly lost because I had no one. I couldn't contact anybody. I had nobody with me who had been there, so I'm just like driving based on this printed out map. It's hard to explain, but it was just such an adventure, and I felt like I was so in the middle of nowhere. But I did end up making it. Found power vehicles. There was nobody really there besides Andy and Emily because it's in the middle of the winter. They're just working on builds and track improvements, things like that. There's no one really drifting there. But it just so happened that a couple of the tracks didn't have ice on them and were driftable. When I got up there, I had already talked to Andy about purchasing a car. I really wanted to it was always my dream to have a right-hand drive car from Japan with all the styling and the parts. So we had already looked at some vehicles and pre-selected them. When I got there, they were sitting there. And so that was like seriously amazing to see this car that I had looked at online, talked to Andy about, and actually see it in person and get to touch it and sit in it and all that. And so my first right-hand drive car was a Toyota JZX 100, like candy brown with this like sparkle green bass boat flake all over it. It had, I don't even remember what kind of wheels they were. Knew all this stuff, but it had crazy, the big 3-piece chrome wheels. And I got to see it in person. I was like, yeah, I want to buy it. I was going to try to bring it back home. But then we looked around and Andy was like, hey, a couple of tracks are actually clear enough to drift on if you want to try. Like, well, hell yeah. I mean, I'm here, whatever, it's winter, but I got a car. My first time driving right-hand drive was driving the rental car up to Ebisu. So I was like, let's go for it. So I ended up taking my brand new JZX out. I think it was actually my first turbo car. I'd always driven, that's not totally true, but first inline 6 turbo. Just like everything was so brand new. And I was basically let out to Ebisu. I was the only person there. And I had all the tracks that didn't have crazy ice, I was able to drive on. So that was an experience that I don't think too many people have had. Like, you can't even replicate that because most of the time it's not even going to be open, and if it is open, there's going to be people there. So I got to do the Gymkhana, which is only open during the winter, or it's open for like the drift school that they have there, but generally you don't really ever get to drift the Gymkhana course. And it's just a small, super fun little course, but it's absolutely perfect for learning to drift, learning to drive right-hand drive. And at this point, I only been drifting for less than a year. So yeah, I just basically went out there. There was still a little bit of ice on the track, just shredded around, had a bunch of fun. So basically, the whole day was just, I'd only planned one day for it because I didn't know if I was actually going to get to drift, and I didn't want to be stuck up in the middle of northern Japan. Awesome time, just drifting these new courses, right-hand drive. It was such an unreal experience, and I really wanted to bring a car back home, literally with me, but get one shipped back home. They're still not legal, the one that it was, so a couple more years. So it was like 8 years out before it'd be legal, so I was like, I want to get something else. So we had looked at a Silvia, orange Silvia, that was kind of a time attack car. That one wasn't prepped for drifting, so I didn't actually get to drift it, but I did get to check it out and ended up purchasing that as well, shipping it back home. That became kind of my practice car back here. We ended up putting a bunch of parts on it and using it for a while, and then we did a giveaway with it. But that was a super special car. That was like my first right-hand drive car that I brought to the US. The JZX, actually what ended up happening with that is it really was like too nice of a car for an Ebisu car. It had like full body kit and paint, glow and all this stuff. So I ended up trading that for the R32, the red one that we drift now all the time, our practice car. That was actually my Ebisu car. Basically, when the time came to do Formula Drift, take our campaign here more seriously, we decided to take a break from any Japanese drifting and ship that R32 back here, kind of prep that for the US. But yeah, that was pretty much my first trip, first time to Japan, first time experiencing the culture, eating the food, first time drifting, first time driving right-hand drive. It was absolutely unreal. I'd highly recommend that all of you try to get there at some point in your life. And if you go, do also try to drift. You can always share a car with some friends. There are super cheap ways to do it, but that could be another video if you guys want to see that. So if you guys enjoy this, let us know in the comments if you want to hear some other crazy stories or cool stories or any more info on Japan or Ebisu. Let us know. Hit that subscribe button. Help us build this channel. We appreciate all of you.